Okay, well, good evening, everyone. Sorry for being a bit late. We'll call the meeting to order. And first item, please, come clerk. Sorry, a microphone for you. Here we go.
Your Worship, item 2.1 on the agenda, minutes of April the 8th.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mackenzie, and I think seconded by the deputy, with a close by Councillor Sullivan in third. Okay, thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Please, anyone contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you. Next item.
Your Worship, item 3 is approval of the agenda. There are a few additions. 16.1 would be an approval, seeking approval to have a update from St. John EMO with regard to the spring freshet. 16.2 is a recommended addition with respect to a Red Cross agreement. And 17.1 is a recommendation from Committee of the Whole with respect to an intergovernmental affairs and strategic communication position. And there is a request to add 16.1 and 16.2 up on the agenda to deal with those immediately.
Okay, let's... Thank you. Moved by the deputy, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone? Okay, thank you. Anyone contrary-minded? Not seeing any? Okay, thank you. First items then.
Well, maybe deal with disclosures of conflict of interest.
I apologize. Sure. Yep. No conflicts of interest tonight? Okay. Thank you.
And so the first item would be 16.1, St. John EMO Spring Freshet Update.
Okay, and I'm going to ask the city manager just to give us an introduction, please.
Your Worship, members of council, because of the opportunity we had this evening of a common council meeting, we thought in addition to the regular update information that we are providing you by email and on our website, that we'd actually have our incident commander, our chief of the fire department, to provide you with a verbal update as well. By way of background, anytime there is an emergency and we choose to stand up our emergency management organization, and in particular our operations center, we appoint an incident commander, and by normal process and procedure, that is usually designated to our fire chief, and is the case in this particular circumstance. Finally, before I hand the podium over to him, I would simply point out that for anybody, not only members of council, but members of the public who wish to have any or all of the information with regards to the spring flooding, we do have our River Watch website up and running, and it is quite exhaustive in terms of the information that is provided on it, in addition to all of our social media tweets, etc. So the public can be aware of everything that is going on by simply referencing that electronic media. And without further ado, I'd like to hand over to the incident commander.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Your Worship. Would be as brief as possible, and thank you for including us in the agenda. And at the start of the agenda, I've got a number of people that we're going to try to wrap up relatively soon tonight. First and foremost, I don't want to lose sight as we get operationalized and we go to work and we take care of business, because I know a number of councillors are getting inquiries on an hour-by-hour basis. Our empathy is for our citizens and those citizens that are impacted. So, you know, we're driven. People talk about how you're going to do for 10 or 15 days. And, you know, I think about us being able to go home and get a rest. The people that are impacted by this event, and same as last year, they don't get a chance to go home. And so we are driven by the fact that we're helping our community, and that's the roles we have. And about, as soon as I get back to the office, you're going to get the second IAP that will talk about the incident objectives. We've sent you a list of objectives last night. I'm pleased to say that we've had success in reaching all of the objectives we set at the start of the day. I'll briefly just scan through them. I'll scan quickly through, and then you can ask me questions. One objective was to maintain 2 safe, effective sandbag filling locations, monitor roadways, and maintain and install additional barricades as required, maintain emergency response presence within the flood-affected area, continue communication with respect to voluntary evacuation, maintain and sustain reception, emergency shelter, and animal shelter. That's relatively new for tonight. Implement contingency plan to protect critical infrastructure, maintain vehicle access on Westfield Road. That's a new objective that you'll see. And maintain security in flood-affected areas. So all the objectives you got last night have been achieved. The enhancement for tonight would be, going into tomorrow, will be the work that we're going to do around maintaining access to the Westfield Road from the western section. So we've just got approval from the Department of Transport to build up Westfield Road and allow for vehicle traffic to maintain that access. Without that access, we were talking about 800 homes, 1,300 residents being isolated. I spoke about the affected residents and our empathy and our desire to help as best we can. It's a tremendous team effort for every department. We talk about the security, the roadways, and maintaining traffic control and giving people the comfort. That's our police resources. Our GIS department is doing an incredible job allowing residents to see the impact at the various flood levels. Our communications team is doing an incredible job. Transportation environment, if you can imagine loading 10,000 bags. We've had some challenges with our new tool. We're waiting for a piece of equipment to come in, but we're keeping pace. And I do want to emphasize, before I pass over to Eves, I do want to emphasize that it's a voluntary evacuation. We're going to continue to emphasize that. And our worry on evacuation is that if somebody were to have some type of health issue, some type of home issue, that those areas that become isolated, it's obviously going to be very challenging for us to help like we want to. So the voluntary evacuation is based on the fact that if someone were to have a cardiac arrest, a stroke, suffer some type of sickness, our ability to get there and help is going to be tremendously impacted if you're isolated. If there's a fire event, we're going to have a hard time getting there if you're isolated. So it's based on that probability. And the reality is you're a lot safer being in some place we can get to. So that's why we're going to emphasize that. We are headed to the second or first worst flood situation that we've ever had. One of the things we got to look at is, as the city manager mentioned, is River Watch, St. John River Watch. Yves Legier has put together an incredible program that people can have a look at. So I'm going to get Yves to demonstrate that River Watch, and maybe afterwards, if you have any questions, either one of us can answer them.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. As the chief mentioned on the, if you'll look at the screen over there, I'll bring up the Riverwatch page. And as you can see at the top of the page, there's a link to the app. And I'll bring up the app here. So what we've done with the app is we've added the different flood layers for the current flood level, as well as last year's peak, and the every day's prediction for the 5-day predicted levels. So people can go through and actually zoom into the map and click through the different layers and see how the different, where the flood will be on different days. We've also added road closures on the app, as well as the recommended voluntary evacuation areas, and the sandbag distribution centers. So if anybody needs any information as to which roads are currently closed, or, you know, are there any questions? Or
Any questions, council? That we may have,
and
yeah. Thank you.
it's just a, if somebody's looking for their own address as well, their own property, they can simply search the address at the top, and it'll take them to their address.
Okay, we may have a couple of questions here for you. Councillor Norton.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. No questions, but I was talking to Yves on the way in. You can't understate the work that GIS does. It often flows below the radar in terms of the good information it puts out, and no more critical time than during this flood 2.0, if you will. So we're thinking of residents, and we thank Yves for getting out information more precisely than it was even last year. So the sandbag distribution centers with voluntary evacuations, we're putting real-time information in people's hands. So thanks to you and your very small team and the monumental work that you do. It's huge. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So any questions, Councillor Armstrong? Is it for Yves? We'll come back to the chief. For Yves? Oh, Chief, okay, thank you. Counselor McKenzie for
Thank you.
Eve or the Chief? Okay, Counselor McKenzie.
So if I'm at home and I can bring this up on the computer, right?
This
And-
will work on any device, your phone, your laptop, computer.
Okay. And they just go to the city website and they click on. So
Exactly.
this will tell me how far the water's going to come up on my property tomorrow. I can find out now.
Yeah, you can see where it's at today and every day for the next 5 predicted days.
Okay. That's a really good tool. Thank you.
It's being used fairly well. I checked just before the meeting. We've already had over 4,000 hits, so it's
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Eve, I have a question, because just in terms of scope of this tool, because I had actually an email from a person who is incredibly thankful, grateful to you, who lived outside the city, and they wondered when we were going to get our tool updated again. Is this, how far?
It does cover Greater St. John,
Yeah, well,
Granby, Westfield, Rothsay, and Quispamsis.
Okay, well, thank you. On behalf of the citizens of Greater St. John, they say thank you, because they were calling me, wondering when we were going to have this GIS tool updated on behalf of the region. So this is another great example of how the city of St. John delivers great value. So thank you very much for that. Okay, thank you. And then, Chief, I think we'll have a few questions for you. Chief, anything else in your update, or are you ready for questions?
If I could just offer that Eve's tool, and the city manager asked me today to provide, who's impacted as a result of today's level, and who will be impacted as a result of Friday's level. And certainly the tool that GIS has developed has enabled our planning and informed our planning process incredibly.
Oh, thank you very much, sir. Okay, Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Worship. Chief, the Westfield Road, you're starting to fill it in at the co-op end, I'll call it? Is that?
That's correct. That'll start tomorrow, I believe.
Tomorrow, okay, because I was out there today and they closed the road, but they're going to start tomorrow?
Absolutely.
Now, what about the Randolph Road heading to Dominion Park? Is there any option to fill that in, because that's closed as of
Yeah,
today?
we looked at that last year, and the engineering is no different. I don't believe the bridge or the infrastructure there will support us filling that
Will
up.
hold the weight?
That's right. So
Right.
the city of St. John's purchased a John boat, which helps us with mobility across that flow of water. We also have access, we believe, 90% certain that the Canadian military will be here helping us get across some of those flooded areas. And we're very pleased if indeed it happens, and it looks like it is, that this will be the first time in my history that we've had a joint operation with the Canadian military. And I think that's great to make those connections.
Now, on this end of the Westfield Road, down by Centricare, is that proposed to be filled in too, or do you think it's going to get to that level?
As of the planning section today, we didn't anticipate it getting addressed right away. We're going to have to monitor that and work on that idea, that concern tomorrow.
Okay, all right, thank you.
It's on the radar. I can tell you that we haven't put together a plan. The Westfield Road out towards the co-op entrance was our goal for today.
I must congratulate you, because you're way ahead of the game this year. I mean, you know what the problem is, you're filling in that road, and like you say, people aren't going to be secluded after this. I think it's great, everybody, and I just feel sorry for the people that are flooded. It's terrible, but what you guys do and have to see, it's just awesome. And the sandbags and everybody working together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Chief, just a couple of questions, because again, just take every opportunity with you in front of us. With the information we have today, and I guess relative to, unfortunately, just last year, the water is going to be about the same, maybe even a bit more, in terms of levels.
Yeah,
Is that-
last year's height was 7.6. Depending where you look, it's 7.6 or 5.7 or hang on a sec.
Yeah, 570, yeah.
5.7, 5.73.
Right.
I'm sorry, okay.
Okay.
And this year it's 5.7.
Right.
Yeah, but the concern is that our trends that we're watching over the last 4 days, every day the trend has been, and I feel they're more accurate, but every day it's been somewhat understated. So yesterday's projection for today was 4.7.
Yeah,
Today's actual is 4.8. Yesterday's projection for the peak was 5.7. Today's projection for the peak is 5.8. So it seems that we're more finite, but we may be understating a bit in being more finite.
Okay, thank you, Chief. And I must confess, I think I knew that, but I wanted, with the media's help here, everyone to hear that. Secondly, Chief, if you had a couple of pieces of advice for, you've been at this for a long, long time, a couple of pieces of advice for homeowners, residents, I'm not trying to put you too much on the spot, but would you have a couple of pieces of advice that folks should hear?
We would ask that they heed the voluntary evacuation notice. The concern is that we understand that many people in the potentially isolated areas don't see a threat because they'll just stay in their homes. Us in public safety are concerned that we won't be able to get to them if they become stressed, whether it's a health issue, a property issue, or some type of crime issue. If you're isolated and help is delayed, that's a concern to us. So that we feel the very real threat is that help, us being able to respond to that help, if you're isolated, will be compromised. We understand that people all the time are processing probabilities, and they don't see themselves in that 1% that might need the help. Public safety and many of our services exist because even though something might not happen, it still does. So for us, we see those chances and those opportunities, not opportunities, but those occasions where people in bad ways and in unfortunate situations find themselves under distress. It's almost like it's the worst case scenario, what might happen, what else can go wrong, and that's what we're worried about. So people need to put themselves there.
Okay, thank you. City Manager, sorry.
If I may, just to pile on to our incident commander's comments about what cautions to the residents, I would add two quick ones. As the chief has mentioned, every estimate on flood level this year has been an underestimation. So people should pay heed that even though we're saying that the peak will now be 5.7, 5.8, it could very much conceivably be higher than that. Which leads to my second point on preparedness. There's all sorts of valuable information on the website, and we've broadcasted it in various newspaper articles, etc., about what individual homes and businesses can do to prepare themselves for the possibility of floodwaters. And it's everything from having a minimum of 72 hours of supplies and medications to sandbagging, if that's appropriate and works based on the geography, etc. There is still time before we hit the peak levels to do additional preparedness, and we would certainly encourage all of our residents and our businesses to take heed of that as well.
Okay, thank you. So, Chief, I don't see any other questions. Let's try to wrap up. I'd hoped, frankly, just as I'm sure you and Chief Connell and others, that the 1 in the 100 wouldn't come again 12 months later. I think down the road here, we'll certainly have some more discussion about climate emergencies and other realities that we seem to be facing. It's not for tonight. I hesitate, but I'm going to do my best to thank you, your whole EMO team, our firefighters, police force, all our inside-outside workers, our managers. I'll tell you, you want to be proud to be even in proximity to a group of people. It's when these types of incidents are happening. NBEMO, ambulance, NB, all of the folks. I would echo the concerns that the city manager just said. I just feel like this overwhelming need to just go around and try to help. So I spent time driving around Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I didn't see what I would call a preemptive move until Monday. And I was really, frankly, shocked that despite the open houses, back in the last week of March, despite all the work that had been done, despite the warnings, so I don't know what that says about us as human beings, but, and then just I find ourselves, Chief, just repeating your message from an EMO perspective around public safety. Don't drive on roads that are flooded. Don't go around the barricades because, we don't want to make revenue that way, but you have to enforce that. And and I just, even today, I was out to a couple of the hot spots and still not seeing some of the activities that I expected. But, and lastly, so a massive thanks to all of the teams. It's going to be likely an exhausting couple of weeks here. And then lastly, to the citizens, I was very proud a year ago of our community, the way neighbors helped neighbors and came together. And, I guess if the message is, if you're in your home tonight and you need help, call the numbers. The Red Cross is there. Call the appropriate numbers. And in terms of volunteers who have reached out, Chief, I've simply been saying, look, if you've got some horsepower and some muscle, watch social media. Do you have any advice for those that want to help and volunteer?
We talked briefly today in one of our planning sessions that indeed we are going to be mobilizing some type of volunteer effort. We just want to understand where that would apply.
Okay.
And so we are going to utilize the wishes of our community and those skills.
Okay. Well, wonderful. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Chief, and to Chief Connell as well for everything your members are doing. So thanks very much. Can I just have a receive and file, please? Okay, thank you. All those in favor? Anyone contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you. Next item.
Your Worship, earlier today, staff had distributed item 16.2, which is a confidentiality agreement between the Canadian Red Cross and the City of St. John.
Okay, just ask the city manager perhaps to introduce this item to us.
Your Worship, members of council, this is an urgent requirement to do with our evacuation, our voluntary evacuation of residents within our community, in that we wish to enter into an information sharing arrangement with the Red Cross. And in order to do that, there is a contractual or a contract that must be signed in order to exchange that information. And I'll now hand over to Mr. David Dobbelstein, who works in the Emergency Operations Center, to provide a few more details.
Okay, thank you. Just let me get you a microphone, Mr. Dobbelstein.
Good
There you are.
evening. Good evening, Your Worship and Councillors. So the agreement you have before you, the staff recommendation, we apologize for the brevity at which this was given you. This is sort of a last-minute agreement with the Red Cross. We've been working on this for a while now. The staff recommendation is that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the agreement on behalf of the city. And so what this agreement will allow, as the city manager alluded to, is true information sharing between the Canadian Red Cross and our St. John EMO. Currently, the Red Cross has a service agreement with the province of New Brunswick to provide emergency services throughout the province, and that includes the city. But because the agreement is at the provincial level, we actually are not privy to confidential information that they obtain about even St. John residents. So when St. John residents evacuate their homes or contact the Red Cross's 1-800 number, we actually don't know who those people are at this point. We just get aggregate numbers. So we would be very much interested in getting that information so we can have better situational awareness and not have to send first responders into flooded areas needlessly. So there's real benefits to this. St. John EMO is certainly in support of this, and I know our legal team has reviewed this as well. So take any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you. Moved by the deputy, seconded by Councillor McKenzie. So in plain English, Mr. Dobbelstein, it allows just an agreement between the Red Cross and ourselves to share names, addresses, who's been evacuated, so that we know where folks are. We have some method to track and go back and balance out those notes. Okay, thank you. Okay, I don't see any questions on the file. All those in favor? Anyone contrary-minded? Okay, motion is carried. Thank you very much. I did forget to just say one other thing, and it's, you just reminded me, City Manager. So Mr. Dobbelstein is going to be here in a bit, and he's going to talk about population growth. And, one of the things in the City of St. John, we have a pretty big team, incredible, talented team. And in operations like this, those teams, surprised Mr. Dobbelstein probably has his vest on, Chief, underneath his shirt and tie. But it's, those are the resources that we've invested in the City of St. John, that if we went up to the EMO Center right now, those are likely many folks that have other day jobs. They are now been activated for an emergency situation. So my point is twofold. One, again, if you're an affected citizen, know that you've got a group of absolutely phenomenal, talented, well-trained people who are looking after your public safety. Secondly, to the rest of us, and it really hit me last year, I was down at the bottom of the Galt Road with a house trying to be saved, and three minutes up the road, I was driving home and a gentleman was mowing his lawn. So to the folks that are not impacted by this flood, please be patient. The next couple of weeks are gonna are gonna tap us in terms of our resources. So just please be patient with us. I'm sorry to ramble a bit, but I just think it was an important point. So thank you very much. Next item, Colin Clerk.
Next item, Your Worship, is the consent agenda.
I'll move 5.1 to 5.9 inclusive.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Moved by the deputy, seconded by Councillor Reardon. Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Reardon's light is on. Councillor Reardon.
I just have a quick question. 5.7, the Canada Helps Agreement, it's like 60 pages long, that whole item, and I'm just wondering if I can assume that that's all been looked at by the legal department.
Okay, we'll have Mr. O'Reilly speak to that, and just,
What?
thank you, Mr. O'Reilly.
So I'll speak for Mr. Nugent, but yes, our legal department has reviewed the agreement to ensure it's above board. Yeah.
It's complex like any legal document is, so I just thought I'd make sure that it'd been run by legal. The other thing I have a question on is 5.8 Mecklenburg. And when you're doing anything in the city, of course, you know, we're one thing. Great today, we're on a huge hill, but the infrastructure being old and everything, and that whole street's going to all be rebuilt. What do we carry for insurance in case something goes wrong?
So I'll have Mr. McGovern speak to that, Councillor, if you could just go to the
Great
podium.
water.
Thank you. Oops. Yep. No, I had, there you go. Perfect. No, hit it again. Sorry, Brent, you. Okay, don't touch anything. There you go.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship. We do require insurance. I don't know off the top how much it is. It's a standard requirement as part of our general specifications. And I don't know if Mr. Fogan is here this evening. He could, oh, here he is. He may be able to advise you exactly the amount if that's what you're interested in.
I was just curious because there's so much old infrastructure, and it's all a lot of private old infrastructure as well. So anything could go wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, through Your Worship, the quick answer is 5 million. On most of these projects, we require at least 5 million. Some of the more complicated ones, depending on the risk, it could be higher than that, but generally, that's what it is.
Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Your Worship. A quick question on 5.6. When I was reading the report and looking at the tenders for the demolition of the Coast Guard site Phase 2, I thought, great. And then I looked and thought, wow. Sometimes when the price is that good, should you be concerned? So I just thought I should ask the question because the low tender was such a significant difference.
Sure, we'll have Mr. Fogan answer that one as well. I feel like we're, oh, no.
Oh, team.
Oh, it's a team, okay. Okay, I'll just get you your mic, thank you. Mr. Yumin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Through you, Your Worship, here as well, I was surprised about the cost myself here. The two reasons we think that the cost was so low is Galbraith has previously done the demolition for the other building on site, which I believe has experience to do the job. He understands the scope of work, he understands the details, the issues, the risks, and all this here. And the second thing I believe so is because he has his own dump site, which helped to reduce his cost. So there's only two things I think about it here. We spoke to Galbraith, and he understands the scope of work, and he's going to meet our requirement, and he's going to meet our deadline.
So all good news, and we're comfortable that all our conditions will be met in that price.
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Can I just, while you're at the microphone,
Yes.
Mr. Yumin, when, and perhaps it was in the report and I missed it, when do we anticipate the demolition to start, and how long will it last?
The total demolition will take around 7 to 8 weeks,
Okay.
and we hope the completion date will be by June 30th.
Oh, great, fantastic, yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, and Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. I was going to reiterate what Councillor Sullivan just said. It was a great price, $350,000, and I spoke to when I saw it, I go, who leaves $300,000 on the table, because that's what the next lowest bid was. But he's been in business 60 years, and he has his dump site, so I'm otherwise I would raise the question, because who leaves $300,000 on the table? and they don't like to do that, but I'm confident because a 60-year-old company can do it. And if I can comment on 5.8, was it, the Mecklenburg? I believe our engineering staff deserves another credit, because I believe that's the last major contract, if my sources are right. They're all out before the end of April. That's phenomenal. Every job is out for the major job for the city of St. John in the engineering. Years ago, they were coming out June, July, and August, but they're all out before the end of April, and I think that's fantastic. So the Brian Keenan and all the staff and all the commissioners deserve great credit for getting this done. And we've saved, I think I've totaled up at least $3 million, if my mathematics right. That's when you do good business. Get them out early, they're hungry, and the staff deserves a lot of credit, and the engineering staff. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Okay, that's the last question then on the consent agenda. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Anyone contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Again, thank you for all the work, city manager and staff, that goes into that agenda. Next item, please.
Item 6, Your Worship, members' comments.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
I just want to say to all the West Siders out there and anybody that's in the flood zone, the city's working with the EMO, everybody, please follow their instructions. It's for your own good. Councillor Reed and I have cottages up on the water, and we're blessed. She's lower than I am. I'll never get water, but just heed the officials, the guys that know what they're doing. It's a tough job to get someone to leave their house. No one wants to leave their home, nobody. But sometimes they just have to go. Please listen to the experts. And just a short blip tonight because the flood's happening. Fair taxation in the white paper, please go to the website. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Your Worship. At our last Police Commission meeting, Chief Fitch from Fredericton came down to thank many of the officers and civilians of the St. John Police Force who supported the Fredericton Police Force during that tragedy last summer in August when they lost 2 of their officers and 2 civilians. And Chief Fitch did present to me to present to the city just a little plaque in recognition of the cooperation that we lent to them. So, Your Worship, I promised Chief Fitch that I would pass this along to you so we could find a place to hang it.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You know, certainly just another example of New Brunswick's a small province and how we work together and come together in tragedy. I guess sadly I'll follow that up. I'm wearing white and maroon today in support of they're the school colors of North and South Esk Regional High School. Many students and staff in the province, but certainly in St. John today, were the school colors of either North and South Esk Regional or James M. Hill High School in recognition and support of the loss of the 4 teenagers in Miramichi last weekend. So send, I guess, our thoughts and prayers out to that community. And maybe on a bit of a happier note, with the spring here, zoo camps are open for the summer. You can get information on Cherrybrook Zoo's Facebook site. And if you wear your boots, you can go visit the animals now, but make sure you wear your boots. She's a little muddy. So thank you for supporting your Cherrybrook Zoo.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor.
Well, I just have an announcement for the St. John Newcomer Center. They've been nominated for the Top Settlement Agency of the Year award in Canada. And this award is being sponsored by the RBC Top 25 Canadian Immigrant Awards, but they need your votes. So everybody can vote, as you have up until May 16th to vote. So just go online, www.canadianimmigrant.ca/RBC Top 25. So it would really be great for them if they were win this award for the whole country. So if anyone's listening or anyone's here, just give them a vote. They'd love to have your support. And I guess just on another little positive note, I hope I don't embarrass anybody, But I just want to say a big happy birthday to our Commissioner of Water right behind there, Brad. It's a big
birthday.
day for him, and he has to work here tonight.
34. Yeah, perfect. Happy
So
birthday.
happy birthday, Brent.
Excellent. Okay, thank you, Deputy. Councillor Reardon.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have an avid fan that watches council every week that we're on in Hampton, Greg Anderson, and last month in March, he lost his mum.
Oh, sorry.
So she would have been 99 on the 21st of March, lived on her own, did her own thing, ran her own show, so she's a big loss to that family. And so I just want to send condolences out to Greg on behalf of council. It's pretty, no matter how wonderful a person's life is and how long they've lived, you always regret losing someone that's so dynamic in your life. So Greg, on behalf of all of us, our condolences. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Norton.
Thank you, Your Worship. Certainly thanks to our emergency providers, fire, police, the whole team, environmental transportation services. Thinking of Ward 1 is especially impacted. I know that Councillor Armstrong has already said that. So folks, Randolph Island, Dominion Park area, the Westfield Road area, nobody prepares better than those folks in terms of what's going on there. So hats off to them, and we're certainly thinking of them. Also, if you're watching this evening and you've considered how you can get involved, whether it's from a council perspective or an agency, board, or commission, there's lots of vacancies that are firing up. City of St. John Shared Risk Pension Plan Board, Community Grants Evaluation Committee, Develop St. John, Fundy Trail Development Authority, Heritage Development Board, the Lord Beaverbrook Rink, the Power Commission of the City of St. John, Rockwood Park Endowment Fund, St. John Community Arts Board, St. John Parking Commission, St. John Substandard Properties Appeal Committee, and St. John Transit Commission. Those are just the ones that are looking for folks because terms are ending soon or have already ended. So if that was an exhaustive list, just imagine how many are on there. So lots of chances to plug in, become involved, and leave your community or those respective agencies, boards, and commissions better than when you found them. So nobody helps better than St. Johners. So looking forward to seeing all kinds of folks apply within and get involved. Thank you, Worship.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Just a couple of items for myself. I also had, just to recognize a community that's mourning, with Mayor Michelle. I'll just take a slightly different twist on it. I had the opportunity to speak with Mayor Lorden over the weekend, and certainly I think feeling the weight on behalf of his community as we could all imagine, and certainly send our best wishes on behalf of the City of St. John and Council to him and his council as they work through this very trying time. Councillor Mackenzie and I on Saturday, I think it was, it all blended together, but we had a really fun, just a very quick stop in to celebrate with Marjorie Gation her 90th birthday. And the neat part about it is when her mom turned 90, the mayor at the time, Mayor McAlery, visited, and Marjorie said, well, when I turn 90, I want the mayor to come to my birthday party. So somehow that worked its way back, and she had a very large crowd. We had a very nice short visit with Marjorie, very large crowd of family and friends and supporters, including and I don't know Monty's, I know that Monty, who will be 102, and so that Monty and Marjorie are doing, your name has to start with an M, doing something right because they live in their own homes. They're still incredibly active, and I'd love to go back for a cup of tea sometime to find out all the rest of the secrets, so we had fun doing that. I'm going to be reading a proclamation tonight with regards to the Day of Mourning, which is going to be celebrated this Sunday, or observed, celebrated is not the right word, observed, at the memorial at the Lily Lake Pavilion. So representatives from the city of St. John, including Common Council members, I'm sure, I know I'll be attending as well, the St. John Fire Departments and the St. John Police Force and many others within the city will join WorkSafe New Brunswick and the New Brunswick Federation of Labor at the official public ceremony at the Day of Mourning Monument at the W. Franklin Hathaway Labor Exhibit Center in Rockwood Park at 12 p.m. Thank you for the time being there on Sunday, April 28th. And it's to recognize those that have lost their lives while performing their duties. If you go, I hope you will join us there. Make sure you go inside the center. It is fascinating. The pictures, the collection, the archive that they have of pictures around St. John and the greater St. John area. Absolutely fascinating what they've managed to collect inside that building. So please join us for that. I think we've talked not enough, but we've talked about the flood. I didn't realize we were going to have that as well. So I'll, excuse me. And lastly, we got into a really interesting discussion, and certainly haven't had a chance yet. Certainly plan on chatting with the city manager and the common clerk this weekend. There is a by-election coming up on May the 6th, and the advanced polls open on this Saturday, as I understand it. And got into a very interesting discussion about improving voter turnout and what roles should a city play in that, and certainly will be following up. But my main message is to encourage people to actually go out and strike the ballot and do what many fought for us to have the right to do, and that's vote on May 6th in the Ward 3 by-election, and wish all 7 candidates the best wishes on behalf of council. So thank you very much. Next item, Common Clerk.
Your Worship, we have 2 proclamations, items 7.1 and 7.2. First is 7.1 Lyme Awareness Month, and proclamation number 2, 7.2, is Day of Mourning.
Okay, thank you. So Lyme disease is one of the fastest growing infections in Canada. And whereas the population of ticks, the prime cause of Lyme disease, is growing and expanding in New Brunswick. And whereas the tick season is also extended due to climate change. And whereas there is an increasing number of New Brunswickers who are suffering from Lyme disease. And whereas Lyme disease, if not diagnosed and treated early, can become a debilitating condition causing extreme fatigue, cardiac and nervous system disorders, and/or arthritic symptoms. And whereas all New Brunswickers who would benefit by being more aware of Lyme disease, how it is contracted, what the symptoms associated with Lyme disease are, and how to get the prompt medical care needed to avoid illness and suffering. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Don Darling of St. John, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2019 as Lyme Awareness Month in the city of St. John. Okay, thank you. And do you have to call the next item, or can I move on? And the next item, please.
Your Worship, it was 7.2, Day of Mourning Proclamation.
Okay, thank you. So whereas every year 1,000 Canadian workers are killed by workplace injuries and many more die from occupational disease, and whereas thousands more are permanently disabled, and whereas tens of thousands are injured or made ill, and whereas concerned Canadians are determined to prevent these tragedies by first, observing April 28th as a day of mourning to remember these victims of workplace injuries and disease, renewing our efforts to seek stronger safety and health protections, better standards and enforcement, and fair and just compensation, and rededicating ourselves to improving safety and health in every Canadian workplace. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Don Darling of St. John, do hereby proclaim April 28, 2019 as a day of mourning in recognition of workers killed, injured, or disabled on the job. Thank you very much. Okay, next item.
Your Worship, next item is a presentation with respect to Fundy Region Service Commission, the Coastal Link Chair, and we have, or Coastal Link Trail, that is, and we have Nick Cameron here to present.
Okay, wonderful. Good evening, Mr. Cameron.
Evening. Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Council, for having me tonight. I'm Nick Cameron, Recreation Facilitator for the Fundy Regional Service Commission. And also here with me tonight, we have Tanya Harrington with the Southwest New Brunswick Regional Service Commission, and Trevor Fotheringham, who's very active volunteer in this community, responsible for a lot of the trails in this community in Rockwood Park and Little Reservoir Park on the east side. And I'm glad to say now a board member of Coastal Link Trail Incorporated. So this is very much a community effort, this project being led by that main proponent being the Coastal Link Trail Incorporated. And I'll talk a little bit more about that group in this presentation here and about the project. So the purpose tonight here is to inform Council of the project and the proposed route within the St. John area. We want to ensure that this complements existing initiatives and aligns with the city's active transportation, recreation, tourism, and population growth goals. And more specifically, we're requesting a letter of support from the city to be sent to provincial government, the Ministers of Transportation and Tourism in particular, as well as the Trans-Canada Trail Incorporated, and I'll speak to a little bit later as to the purpose for that. So as I mentioned, there's a new not-for-profit corporation, the Coastal Link Trail Incorporated, that is the main proponent behind this project. And they've identified their objectives beyond just establishing a trail. It's about supporting healthy living in this area, augmenting provincial tourism, promoting the economic opportunities that this project provides, and being able to attract and retain population growth in southwestern New Brunswick through a great quality facility like this Coastal Link Trail. So the opportunity came about really because we have two national networks sitting on our doorstep. So the one that we're mostly familiar with would be the Great Trail, or otherwise known as the Trans-Canada Trail, that comes right through here in St. John. But a more recent development is the East Coast Greenway that goes from the Florida Keys all the way up to Calais, Maine. So there's an opportunity here to link those two trail networks and create something that's really unique in the entire world, this the largest international trail network in the world. So these national trail networks don't just happen on their own. They tend to be made up of smaller, more local networks. So in PEI, we have the Confederation Trail. We all know how important the tourism industry is to the province of Prince Edward Island, and the majority of visitors to Prince Edward Island this year will use the Confederation Trail in some way, some portion of it. And of those that visit it, the majority of them had planned on visiting it, so it was a purpose for them, or a reason for them visiting the island in the first place. In Quebec, they have what's called La Route Verte, which is a very well-known cycling network. In fact, it's one of the top cycling destinations in North America, attracting tourists from all over the world. Next door in the state of Maine, they have what's called the Bold Coast Scenic Bikeway. And on the other side in Nova Scotia, they have the Blue Route. So around us, there's a very substantial cycle tourism industry that's developing that we have the opportunity to tap into with a project of our own in this area. So to talk a little bit more about that potential, looking at La Route Verte in particular as a case study, an economic impact study there found that just over 2,800 jobs can be directly attributed to the La Route Verte in Quebec, and is responsible for about $134 million in spending. In the state of Maine, about $66 million can be attributed to the cycle tourism industry. And in New Brunswick, an economic impact study was done last year, and it found that cycle tourists are the trail users that spend the most, which is about $130 per person per visit to a trail and per use of the trail. And I put those pictures there because when we say cyclists, we often think of maybe the photo on the top, someone dressed in spandex looking for the fastest time possible. But that segment is really diversifying, and especially with the introduction of e-bikes, it's opened up cycling to a whole new audience that we can attract to this area. So I talked a lot about tourism, but trails are quite important for population growth as well. So the Sonoran Institute did an interesting study where they surveyed 450 business owners and 500 community members and asked them to rank these various factors on why they chose to move to the community that they live in or why they chose to remain in it. And surprisingly, proximity to trails
ranked in the top 5 above a number of factors that we often think of are more important. So it ranked higher than cost of housing, quality of the school system, healthcare, and wages, which is pretty interesting. So as I said, the opportunity we have here is linking the Trans-Canada Trail with the East Coast Greenway in Maine. So this was further developed by this idea was further developed by a grassroots committee formed a few years ago, and with the support of the Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission, the Fundy Regional Service Commission, and the province of New Brunswick, they commissioned a feasibility study for this idea. It's 250 pages long, so we won't go through it tonight, but it's available online for your review there. And then shortly after that, the government in summer 2018 released their New Brunswick Trails Action Plan, which identified 11 trails in the province as having significant potential for attracting tourists and getting our local residents active. And the Coastal Link Trail was named as one of those 11 trails. So this is a pretty unique opportunity that we have in this area. So the route itself, this route is mostly based on the feasibility study. Some small changes as we go into communities and discuss that with them and get some suggestions, and we're looking for any suggestions here tonight as well. So the route so far is approximately 70% on-road, 30% off-road. A lot of the feedback that we get is a lot of people wanted to see more of it off-road. The reason a significant portion is on-road is because we want to get something up fairly fast and cost-effectively, and we can do that with a lot of existing road assets. But we understand that sort of the will of the community mostly is looking for something off-road, and we'll look for those opportunities as we further develop this. As I said, the main objectives here, we need to connect those two trails, and also we don't want to create another byway. Another reason for starting this project was because of the twinning of Route 1, which created a byway around some of these rural communities, and we want to pull people back into these communities, not create another opportunity for people to go around them. So although there are maybe some opportunities to go more into the wilderness, those maybe we'll look at further down the road as offshoots, but for that main artery, we want something that brings people right into the community. So zooming in on this area, the yellow in the top right is the existing, the Great Trail, the Trans-Canada Trail. And you can see two connections to there. There's a blue line and a green line. And the reason for that is because we started with the blue line. That's what the feasibility study suggested, which is a road section. So it'd be using Manawaganish Road and Ocean Westway. And when we went into the community to talk about this, we saw some disappointed faces. When you talk about the Coastal Link Trail, they really envisioned something different. So we were pushed to go back and look at what kind of opportunity exists to create something a little bit more world-class, something that could compete with something like Velt and pull some of that same audience down this way. So that's what had us looking at the shoreline trail along the former rail bed around Bayshore, Seaside, Duck Cove, and eventually connecting to Lorneville. So what we're suggesting here is that we investigate that option more as a primary option. If it proves to have many barriers, maybe there's some cost barriers there, then we have the road as a backup that can be sprung up fairly quickly and easily. But as far as creating something that's world-class, I think it's that shoreline trail that's really going to impress visitors and inspire our own residents to get out and get active. So next steps, Coastal Link Trail Incorporated holds $1 million in seed funding, and right now they're focusing on design work and implementation in the municipalities, including this area. So $1 million is not enough to do everything at once, so we need to prioritize. So the priorities in the St. John area will be a design study for the shoreline trail, and the Coastal Link Trail Incorporated is offering to pay for that study in full. And next would be some trailhead design. The locations deemed as most appropriate so far would either be Rockwood Park, Uptown, or Marketplace around the Carleton Community Center area. Rockwood Park seems to be a bit of a favorite there, where there's a number of amenities and just the existing trails there, the parking, the restaurants. There's some good amenities there for a trailhead, so that seems to be the favored. And then we'd be looking at some upgrades along the Spruce Lake Trail, an existing trail that goes along Spruce Lake, although if you've driven there recently, you might notice that it has some flooding areas, so we'd be doing some improvements there to ensure that doesn't become a regular thing. Currently, what's happening, we have a marketing, signage, and wayfinding plan that there's a current RFP open for that. My counterpart in southwest New Brunswick, Tanya, is working with ACOA to secure some funding for an economic impact study. And then we'd like to register this trail with the Trans-Canada Trail Network. That does a couple of things. It opens up some marketing opportunities. We would be considered part of the Trans-Canada Trail, so we'd be on their map and part of their marketing efforts. But also it opens up some funding opportunities. They have capital matching funds and planning, a funding opportunity available specifically for engineering and planning. But we need to register first to qualify for that funding. So that's why we're looking for a letter of support here to go to Trans-Canada Trails, and also to the province where they own a significant amount of property in this project to let them know that that this community is supportive of this project. So again, the specific ask for council tonight, we're asking for your support just of the vision and objectives. There's no financial ask here today. And again, to inform the provincial government of your support as well as the Trans-Canada Trail. And with that motion, the Coastal Link Trail Incorporated is able to proceed with the design work for the Shoreline Trail. And once that design work is complete, we would come back to council with those findings. How the community can get involved. We have a board of directors that's pretty full, but we still are coming across people that want to get involved. So we're starting local committees. So we have an advisory committee for this area that people can get involved with. Let your MLA know that you're interested in this project, that you think it's a positive thing for southwestern New Brunswick. And the relevant ministers there, again, would be Bill Oliver, the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure, and Robert Gauvin, Minister of Tourism, Heritage and Culture. I have a picture there, Trevor, who is a very experienced hiker and trail builder. Glad to have him on board, and he's going to be chairing the local committee here as well. So that's my presentation. I'm glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Cameron. Questions, Council? Deputy Mayor.
Oh, well, Nick, thank you for the presentation. I think it's a great initiative. Who pays for, you're going to apply to ACOA for the funding to do the design, but do you also get some funding from ACOA or from the government just to continue the operation and to have a board? Do you have a small amount of funding, or? So
right now, it's largely through the support of the initial $1 million came from the provincial government. The feasibility study that was done last year was also from the provincial government, and also a portion from the Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission. And then as far as the operations today, it's largely leaning on volunteer work, and as well my time, which is paid by the Fundy Regional Service Commission, and Tanya's time paid by the South New Brunswick Service Commission.
Okay, thank you. And you need us to send one letter of support to the province?
Yeah, exactly. To specifically to those two ministers, where they are sort of the decision makers in this. They've been briefed on this project. Positive conversation, but our takeaway from that meeting was that they need to know from their constituents that this is an important project before they can really throw their support fully behind it. So that's what we're doing now, is going to the various communities, briefing them on the project, and asking that if they support the idea, just to let their support be known to those ministers.
And do you need a copy of that letter to go to your board, or just to we just send it to the two ministers?
A copy wouldn't hurt, but yeah, definitely to the two ministers, and I can also provide an email address for the Trans-Canada Trail Incorporated as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Deputy. Councillor Norton.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nick, thanks. I know we've had a chance to talk about this project before. There's certainly an interest as it relates to the west side of St. John, but an interest in terms of the greater St. John and the southern region as well. So, Council, it doesn't come as any surprise that wherever we can find pathways, no pun intended, to cooperate regionally, I think it's incumbent upon us to do that. Some of the mechanisms that we have in place right now aren't exactly allowing us to do that, but thanks to Nick and his leadership and the board that he works with, this is a great opportunity to connect the dots, so to speak. I do have a motion here, and Your Worship, I can put on the table or wait for comments and say it afterwards. I don't think it would prevent further comments. You want me to?
You could put it
Certainly.
out, sure.
It would simply be that move that Common Council send a letter of endorsement in support of the Coastal Link Trail to the Minister of Transportation, to the Minister of Tourism, and to the members of Southern Caucus, as well as to Nick and the board that he's currently working with. And if we get a seconder. Thank you, Deputy. Other than that, I think it's a great opportunity to work collaboratively with our neighbors across southern New Brunswick, and I see it as a real win. And from what I can see, it's only going to cost us a letter on 8.5 by 11 and some ink to put our stamp of approval behind this project. That somebody else is really doing the work and putting the feet on the ground to mobilize it. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Reard.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, Nick, for bringing this forward. I think it is a great opportunity for us. And, it's pretty exciting, really. And I just say myself, gas cannot go up fast enough or high enough to get people on e-bikes. But I was out to Vancouver not long ago, and I visited my daughter. And we decided we'd rent bikes and pedal along the seawall. And you know what, Nick? You do forget how to ride a bike, I discovered. It seems like it should be simple, but when you get on it, your sense of balance isn't what it used to be, at least mine wasn't. So, no, I think it's a great opportunity. I think it's a great tourism opportunity. I think it's a great opportunity just for citizens to get out there and be more active. That's where I guess I see the real benefit for St. Johners. So I'm very supportive of it. And it's always nice when a project comes and a lot of the groundwork's been started and you sort of have a plan, you know where you're going, and it's pretty straightforward. So I do appreciate that too. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So I'm just going to ask a question. So I'd say, Mr. Cameron, don't I'm going to ask a question of our city manager. Only I'm supportive. I think it's I think the network. I really loved your slide that you had up, Nick, around sort of, if you will, ranking in terms of what people are looking for in terms of recreational access to trails. I think we need to know that, number one. We know that folks really value recreational opportunities. We've got another project we've been working on with you that we're trying to move forward, and we want to attract many more people to the region. My question, I guess, to the city manager is, a letter seems fairly simple. I think the motion seems fairly simple. Just have we had dialogue from a staffing perspective on the project, and how does this fit into to the other work that we're doing? So I'm not supportive of the letter. I just want to understand where it fits. City manager.
I'll let Mr. O'Reilly speak first, and then I'll sum it up afterwards.
Okay, thank you. You just hit your button for me. Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
So, Your Worship, we've had some discussions with the group about this project. In terms of aligning with our transportation plans, it does identify in the Trails and Bikeways Strategic Plan a link along Manawaganish Road. So that's being achieved as part of this. It does link to the Trans-Canada Trail at Manchester and Manawaganish, which is excellent. The Lower Clover Loop as well, which is listed, is also in that Trails and Bikeways plan. The one aspect we've been speaking with the group about is, again, depending on what course of action they take, whether it's off-street or on-street, is, especially if it's on-street, the level of signage to make sure it meets proper transportation standards. And then in either case, ensuring that there's a proper operations and maintenance plan once it's constructed. The city has two defined cycling routes within the city, so the Trans-Canada Trail, which was built in 2017, and then the Campus Harbor Connection, which is a south to north connection. In both those cases, when council adopted or endorsed both those plans, it wasn't only to endorse the capital costs to put those trails in place, but also an operations and maintenance plan to make sure that we sustain it to a high level. So that's one of the things we'd like to see come back with this group at a later date, is once the routes defined and the plans defined, is to make sure that the funding's in place, regardless whether it's a city or elsewhere, to make sure we can sustain this to a high level.
Okay, thank you very much. City manager? Yeah.
Your Worship, members of council, I understand the motion, and from a staff perspective, producing a letter of endorsement on behalf of council is certainly feasible. We will have to carefully word it so that it is endorsement, but without, at this point in time, any implication of financial support. Because if there was a financial bill tied to this, then of course we would have to come back to council to have that discussion. So we will endorse it, but we will word it carefully to not imply that a check is also following.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much for that clarity. Any other, I don't see any other lights, so on the motion that's on the floor, all those in favor? Anyone contrary-minded? Don't see any, okay, thank you. And then kind of a receive and file on the presentation, please. Okay, thank you. Moved and seconded by Councillor Norton, thank you. On the question, all those in favor? Anyone contrary-minded? Not seeing any, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cameron and others. Thanks for the presentation. Okay, Common Clerk, next item.
Your Worship, next item is 10.1 on the agenda, and this is a consideration of a third reading of a bylaw. This particular one was not part of a public hearing, so the public hearings were for 10.2, 10.3, and 10.4. And just a reminder that absent from that meeting on April 8th, when we had the public hearing, were the Mayor, Councillor Strobridge, and Councillor Merrithew. So you'd be asked to remove yourself for 10.2, 10.3, and 10.4.
From the chamber. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
So for 10.1, it's a weight restriction bylaw amendment and agreement, and this particular item has a staff recommendation as well. So we'd be looking for approval of the staff recommendation and third reading by its entirety and by title.
I'll move staff recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Reardon, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions about it. When I read through this kit again, it says that the weight restriction is going to be lifted possibly May 12th anyway. The kit also says that they are looking to move this crane. Again, they don't want to wait till May 12th because of the value of the crane, the security risk, the loss of revenue, and additional expenses. They would like to move it sooner than May the 12th. So they've offered us April 27th or 8th, or May 4th or 5th. But the bylaw says that we're going to endorse all four of those dates, and it also says that that means that anything of any weight apparently will travel over the roads during those four. So I was just thinking when I read it, if it's so imperative to move it before the 12th, couldn't they hammer down a date instead of giving like 4 dates? Couldn't we get that to one weekend if for those 4 days the roads are going to be open to any travel?
Okay, Mr. O'Reilly, I think is prepared to speak to that, sir.
Yep. So Councillor Reardon, you made an excellent point in terms of one of the risks of this. We are controlling quite well this particular move, but certainly for those 4 days, any vehicle can operate 100% on those three roads, so that's certainly a risk. In terms of the 4 days, it was simply, it's quite an operation for them to dismantle the crane and to actually move it off of those 3 streets. So it was simply a matter of providing a few options for them so that, because again, we'd have to come back for 2 subsequent meetings to get it changed. So it was a matter of just providing some options. But your point's a valid one. That is certainly a risk over those 4 days. Other vehicles could operate over those 3 streets.
Now, the other question I have is that they will engage, I think they're called the contractor, will engage EXP to look at the roads as far as what the risks to the roads are. But shouldn't we be engaging someone to look at that at their expense? I mean, if I was going to be engaging someone to write me a report and I'm paying for it, I don't know, for someone else. It would just make more sense, I would think, or the optics would be better if we engaged that company, whoever
Sure.
did that, and they sponsored it.
So in the agreement itself, which we're asking council to endorse, the requirements that the consultant, EXP, will be undertaking are very defined.
Okay.
So whether the city engages them or Irving Equipment engages them, the outcomes will be the same, and the final outcomes will be shared by both parties. It will be a professional engineer that does the report, so they're obligated to use a professional judgment in providing the results. But yeah, we're very constrained in particular with what the requirements need to be.
Now, it's going to have a police escort. Will that be charged back to anyone?
Yes, any costs associated with it, including costs from police, will be recouped from Irving Equipment.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so on the recommendation that's on the floor, is my mic on? Yep, on the recommendation that's on the floor, I don't see any questions. So on the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone contrary-minded? Okay, not seeing any, thank you. And then, okay, thank you. Moved by the deputy, excuse me, and seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Okay, on the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone contrary-minded? Not seeing any? Common Clerk?
A law to amend a bylaw respecting weight restrictions within the City of St. John enacted under the authority of Section 262(1) of the Motor Vehicle Act, being enacted by the Common Council of the City of St. John as follows: a bylaw of the City of St. John entitled a bylaw respecting weight restrictions within the City of St. John enacted under the authority of Section 262(1) of the Motor Vehicle Act enacted on the 5th day of April 2004 is hereby amended as follows. 1. Schedule A is amended by adding the following words under the following headings. Connection route, King Square South between Charlotte Street and Sydney Street only between April 27, 2019 and April 28, 2019 inclusive, and between May 4, 2019 and May 5, 2019 inclusive. Sydney Street between King Square South and Union Street only between April 27, 2019 and April 28, 2019 inclusive, and between May 4, 2019 and May 5, 2019 inclusive. Union Street between Sydney Street and Crown Street only between April 27th, 2019 and between April 28th, 2019 inclusive, and May 4th, 2019 and May 5th, 2019 inclusive.
Thank you. Moved by the deputy, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Thank you. On the question, all those in favor? Anyone contrary-minded? Not seeing any. The motion carried.
A bylaw to amend a bylaw respecting weight restrictions within the City of St. John enacted under the authority of Section 2621 of the Motor Vehicle Act.
Okay, thanks. And I think it's appropriate, City Manager, I'd just like to thank staff. This is an example where we have an existing bylaw. Somebody has a need, and I suspect that there was quite a bit of work that went into making this happen tonight. You, City Manager, have challenged the organization to facilitate over regulate, but to do that in a balanced way. So Mr. O'Reilly and everyone else that was involved in this, sort of thank you. The paperwork arrives here and it appears fairly easy, but I suspect there was a lot of work that went into getting that here to move that piece of equipment out, so thank you for that. Okay, thank you. Next item, and we'll recuse ourselves, actually. Okay. How far do we have to go?
Just outside the room.
As far as you can.
Call the item.
Common Clerk?
Yes, Your Worship. Item 10.2 on your agenda is a third reading, as mentioned before, from a public hearing which occurred on April 8th. And it's a third reading for 40 Mountain View Drive. And it does have a municipal plan and a zoning plan bylaw amendment. It would require 5 votes of council. Under the municipal plan, a vote under the entirety, and then by title, under zoning entire, a vote for section 59, and then another vote by title.
Move municipal plan in its entirety.
Okay, on that vote, anyone wish to speak on it? Ms. Hamilton, Commissioner?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, through you to Council, I just wanted to point out that in terms of the recommendation you'll be voting on it, included in your package is a supplemental report from staff that is advising of a minor amendment to one of the Section 59 conditions. It would be Clause G on page 2 of the Council report. And this, the reason for this amendment, it was recommended by the City Solicitor to improve the enforceability of the recommended municipal easement. This amended clause has been reviewed by the developer, and he is in agreement with it. All other aspects of the recommendation are as per the PAC report. So I would recommend that Council approve third reading of the amended resolution.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from Council? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried. Common Clerk?
A law to amend the municipal plan bylaw being enacted by the City of St. John and Common Council convened as follows. The municipal plan bylaw of the City of St. John enacted on the 30th day of January 2012 is amended by 1, amending Schedule B, future land use by redesignating a parcel of land with an area of approximately 3.25 hectares located at 40 Mountain View Drive, also identified as PID numbers 00313429 and 00426452, from low-density residential to low-medium-density residential classification.
Thank you. And now we need it by title, municipal. Okay. On the question for the third reading by title, all those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. Common Clerk.
A law to amend the municipal plan bylaw.
Okay, and now we need third reading entirely by the zoning bylaw.
Move third reading.
On the question, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Common Clerk.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John, be it enacted by the City of St. John and Common Council convened as follows. The zoning bylaw of the City of St. John enacted on the 15th day of December 2014 is amended by 1, amending Schedule A, the zoning map of the City of St. John by rezoning a parcel of land having an area of approximately 3.25 hectares located at 40 Mountain View Drive, also identified as being PID numbers 00313429 and 00426452, from high-rise residential and 2-unit residential to integrated development pursuant to a resolution adopted by Common Council under Section 59 of the Community Planning Act.
And now we need a motion for Section 59 conditions. On that question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried.
Move third reading is only by title.
Do you have a seconder? Second. On the question, third reading by title, all those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. Common Clerk, please.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Okay, now next item, Common Clerk.
10.3, Your Worship, is a zoning bylaw amendment, third reading, for 80 and 86 Regent Street with Section 59 conditions. In this case, it would be 3 motions because it's zoning only for entirety, 1 motion by Section 59 conditions, and 1 by title.
Okay, third reading.
Move third reading by in its entirety.
On the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. Common Clerk.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John, be it enacted by the City of St. John and Common Council convened as follows. The zoning bylaw of the City of St. John enacted on the 15th day of December 2014 is amended by 1, amending Schedule A, the zoning map of the City of St. John by rezoning a parcel of land having an area of approximately 727 square meters located at 86 and 88 Regent Street, also identified as PID numbers 00343178 and 55233597, from neighborhood community residential facility to 2-unit residential, pursuant to a resolution adopted by Common Council under Section 59 of the Community Planning Act.
And now I need a motion for Section 59 conditions.
Move Section 59.
Second.
On the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried.
Move
Third reading.
by title.
Second.
On the question, third reading by title, all those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. Common Clerk.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Thank you. And now our next item, Common Clerk.
Your Worship, item 10.4 is a zoning bylaw amendment for 175 Hilliard Street. We are looking for third reading with Section 59 conditions. And just to advise council that in this particular instance, because the decision of council was not following the PAC recommendation, it does require a majority of the whole of council for this to pass, which would be 6 members voting in favor of this. It does require 3 motions, entirety, Section 59, and by title.
Okay. Do I have anyone that wishes to move third reading by entirely? Put it on the floor.
Sure, I'll move third reading in its entirety.
Second. Okay, Councillor Reardon on the question.
The only question I have, and I thought maybe the Commissioner, Jacqueline Hamilton, might be able to just give us briefly why we should support this, I guess, versus what PAC has said. Now, when I read through that again, of course, I get the 60 meters, and that's a thing, and I guess you're comfortable with that, but it might be helpful just for the public.
Okay, you got your light on? Yeah, okay, here you go.
Deputy Mayor, through you to Councillor Reardon. Certainly, the amended staff recommendation was really to meet the spirit of what the Planning Advisory Committee was trying to achieve in raising some concerns about the application of the zoning bylaw amendment in the Uptown and Central Peninsula. So we recommended additional controls there, but the approach we recommended is a more streamlined approach. It doesn't move forward with the conditional use approval, which does introduce some uncertainty for investors. So we're recommending that it go forward as a zoning bylaw text amendment, which certainly addresses the standards and requirements for self-storage facilities, but at the same time creates that certainty and reduces red tape for investors.
Councillor Sullivan.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just for council's information, as I sit on PAC, this is an example of where the system has worked. PAC met. We heard some people. We had some concerns. Staff and PAC had some dialogue on the fly at the meeting, and a recommendation was made. And then staff actually had time to go away and work on some extra things, and came back with a recommendation that met the spirit of what PAC was talking about. Was a better recommendation. PAC, while not officially, I'm aware staff has had conversations with the chair with regards to the change, and just from my perspective on the PAC, what they did was met the spirit of what the discussion was, and then came back with something that was better than what we had at the meeting.
Okay, thank you. On the question, on third reading, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Can someone move section 59 conditions? Oh, I'm sorry, the common clerk has to read, sorry.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John. Be it enacted by the City of St. John and Common Council convened as follows. The zoning bylaw of the City of St. John enacted on the 15th day of December 2014 is amended by one, amending subsection 11.4.1 by adding the following list of permitted uses in the business park commercial, CB zone. Self-storage facility subject to paragraph 11.43F. 2, amending subsection 11.43 by adding the following. F, a lot containing a self-storage facility permitted in subsection 11.4.1 shall not be located within 60 meters of an urban center residential zone. 3, amending subsection 11.71 by adding the following list of permitted uses in the general commercial zone, self-storage facility. 4, deleting paragraph 6.1K and replacing it with the following. K, except as otherwise provided in this bylaw, when outdoor storage or self-storage facility is developed within 15 meters of an abutting lot in a residential zone, the outdoor storage or self-storage facility shall be screened in accordance with the following. I, excluding an opening no greater than 1.5 meters in width that is not oriented towards a street. Coniferous trees or hedges or any other combination thereof shall be planted and maintained in order to create a perimeter of vegetation having a minimum depth of 1.5 meters completely around the storage area or self-storage facility. 2, the vegetation perimeter required by subparagraph I shall have a minimum height at the time of planting of 2 meters when located in residential zone or 2.5 meters when located in any other zone, and be in accordance with paragraph 6.2D. And 3, notwithstanding the above, the outdoor storage area may instead be enclosed in accordance with section 5.5 or by any combination of permitted landscaping structures or berms.
Okay, thank you, Common Clerk. Now, section 59 conditions. On the question of section 59, all those in favor? Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Now we need third reading by title.
Move third reading by title.
On that question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. Common Clerk.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Okay. I think I depart now. Common Clerk, you can go ahead if you want and read the next item.
Next item is 12.1, Continuous Improvement Initiatives Update.
Is somebody making a presentation?
Yes, the mayors, the councilors are on their way back in.
Okay.
Uncomfortable, almost like we were thrown out.
We'll allow you back.
All right. Okay, thank you. Next item, Common Clerk.
So, Your Worship, it's 12.1 on the agenda, and it's Continuous Improvement Initiatives Update.
Okay, thank you. City Manager.
Your worship, members of council, you will recall that starting at the last council meeting, we will be providing you very quick, very short updates on various continuous improvement initiatives. The staff in all departments, not just growth and development services, have been challenged on a quarterly basis to implement one new idea that will support growth and one new idea that will support customer service. This is our continuing endeavor to make you aware of the various ideas that are being implemented. None of these require council approval. This is simply for your information. This evening, we'll touch on three. We have three presenters. First of all, our Common Clerk, Jonathan Taylor. Amy Poffenroth from Growth and Community Development will also speak. And then finally, Kendall Mason from the St. John Water.
Wonderful, okay.
Yes, Your Worship. So we're happy and pleased to announce a growth idea, and it's a newcomer municipal governance program. And as council is aware, we offer a similar program under the PALS program. A few years ago, we created that in partnership with Elections New Brunswick. And it's been now going for 3 years, and we've had very positive feedback with the PALS program from both the PALS coordinator, schools, and students. So the newcomer municipal governance program will build off the positive momentum established by PALS, and will offer newcomers a chance to learn about municipal government and the election process in an interactive, interesting, and welcoming environment. So the objectives of the program: to provide information on municipal governance and the roles and responsibilities of elected officials, and two, to ensure new citizens are informed about the basics for elections, dates, timeframes, polling stations, wards, ballot content, and how to properly mark and cast a ballot. And specifically, the program will offer information on 3 levels of government, how the municipal tax system works, a brief overview of city services and responsibilities, the duties of mayor and council, how to contact mayor and council. Council members will be invited to attend the sessions similar to PALS, and we would hope to bring greetings. How to become involved or volunteer, for instance, the city's agencies, boards, and commissions. Council meeting information, the voting process for municipal and provincial elections, a mock council meeting with voting when we get our new setup, and a mock provincial election with Elections ND.
Wonderful. Wonderful initiative. Okay. Ms. Poffenroth.
So, our growth idea is aimed at unlocking the barrier for mid-rise wood frame construction projects as a cost-saving measure for industry. In collaboration with Atlantic Woodworks, the City of St. John was first in Atlantic Canada to promote wood frame construction as an alternative to the 2015 code, which has yet to be adopted by the province of New Brunswick. Over the past year, we've worked with a number of developers to explore the potential for enabling this form of construction. However, we still haven't seen any projects come forward. We've heard feedback from industry that it's challenging to implement for a number of reasons, including the requirement to have specialized expertise engaged in the approval and construction process. While not mandated by the 2015 code, this was meant as an additional measure to ensure experienced consultants were engaged to provide adequate safeguards to minimize the risk during the construction process. As we don't have a pool of experienced professionals locally in Atlantic Canada, our clients would be faced with bringing in out-of-town consultants, adding additional cost to the design and construction process, potentially negating the benefits of this form of construction. Upon further review, we believe it's reasonable to remove this requirement and leave it up to the professional architects and engineers engaged in the projects to provide the required sign-off, provided they meet the 2015 National Building Code. Enabling this improvement unlocks savings and promotes density while upholding public safety. This change will benefit up to 3 projects currently under consideration, reducing costs in the order of thousands of dollars. I mean, we have 5 to 10,000, but it could very well be more per project.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And Mr. Kendall Mason.
Your Worship and members of Common Council, effective communication is critical to the exchange of technical information between staff and the developers. And this exchange of information is critical to increase the efficiency of that process. And to do that, St. John Water has implemented 3 changes. The first change was St. John Water has assigned 3 staff to support this process from the previous 1 staff member. And the setup will be, there will be a primary contact, and then it will be myself and an engineering technologist that will support the primary contact, and the 3 of us will work on water analysis, regulatory issues, and things like that. And the goal is to speed up that time frame. The second thing we're doing is we're using water and sewer modeling software that currently the city owns. And previously, the developer had to do the downstream analysis, but once we receive information from the developer, we'll perform the analysis and advise the developer on the city's capability to service that development. And what they'll expect to get out of it is from the water distribution side, they'll see water pressures and fire flows capability, and we'll advise them on the ability of the city to support it in terms of sanitary. The third step was in order to do this type of analysis, we need information from the developer. So in order to ensure everyone has a clear understanding of what information we need, what information they're getting, we've developed this form so that they can fill out in advance, and then we can quickly perform an analysis and give them the feedback. So the last kind of component is the response times. And so what we're proposing is once this form is completed and handed in to staff, for drinking water, our water distribution system, we're responding back to, or turnaround times a week, and then again we'll be providing the water pressure at the development site and the fire flow. Sewer is a little bit more complicated, and a lot more regulatory items are coming that way, so we need 2 weeks from the time we receive all the information to get back to the developer to say, listen, we can service that development without any concerns. And so we believe that the coordination of this information using this approach is it's going to speed up the process, and where everyone understands what each party has to play, we feel it's going to be more efficient, and the service level is going to be higher because the developer's going to understand what they need to do in order for the development to move forward. So I guess the last piece is we're hoping to implement all these items within the next 4 weeks, and we'll have kind of an information session with the developers so they understand how to move forward. I guess that concludes the presentations, if there's any comments
Okay.
or questions.
Thank you. Did you?
Just
okay.
any questions?
In close. Okay, thank you. Councillor Armstrong?
Thank you. Kendall, I have a question. I remember when Manor Sutton Road, and I sat through that thing for 5 hours at the PAC, and the fire and the water flow and all that stuff was huge, a huge thing. Now, are you saying you guys, the city is going to, geez, how do I phrase it? Do they still have to hire a consultant and all that stuff? Or are you going to cut that in half by helping them? They give you parameters and then you'll figure it out for them? Is that what I'm hearing?
So in the past, they were required to do the downstream analysis, and they were also required to determine what capacity our water system could provide to to the development. In terms of Manor Sutton, we started taking over that process during that project, and basically the key for them to have an architect and a municipal type person on their team, because the fire flow analysis, we don't have to provide all the fire flow. They can do special things with their development to reduce what their requirements are. So it is good for both teams to have the appropriate staff. And we do find that when the appropriate staff aren't on both teams, challenges and efficiencies kind of go out the window and it becomes longer. But that was a really good process. We did work together. It was challenging, but we fed them information, they fed us information, and I felt it was a good process.
So they're still going to have to hire their consultant, correct?
They
Is that
still
what I'm
have to
hearing?
hire their consultant for the actual development themselves. It's not off-site. The off-site piece we're doing now.
Okay, so they're going to save money is the bottom line, and most important, they're going to save a lot of time, correct?
Correct.
That's what I'm hearing. So congratulations on that. And the other one is for Amy, I guess, if I can have one more. I remember we sat in this room 2 years ago and Jacqueline announced the 6-story building. So it was good to hear, because we had no projects, that you've cut out the red tape.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, manager, what is it, what you're saying, it's good? Facilitate and get rid of regulate, is that what? Over-regulate. I just want to say congratulations, that's huge. I mean, we finally got rid of some red tape, and that's huge for developers. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions. I have just a couple of comments. Congratulations. I would suggest that we've been taking out lots of red tape. These are three. I love the rapid fire. Thank you, City Manager, and to the teams that have presented tonight. I love the rapid fire projects, and everyone's to be congratulated. Thank you, City Manager, for your leadership, because it's really what we're talking about is continuous improvement, improving customer service. We're enhancing culture, facilitating, over-regulating. I really love the projects tonight. I just want to make a comment on each one. The newcomers piece, I just, again, the Common Clerk's Office, the program that they've put together with PALS is exceptional. Thank you for the innovative thinking around having newcomers feel, giving newcomers an opportunity to get engaged in their community. I've had an opportunity to meet with a number of newcomers, and they really appreciate meeting their elected officials. I have this saying that I say to newcomers, whether you've been here for 100 years in St. John or 100 minutes, whether you can vote or not, I'm your mayor. I think it's an important message to send to our newcomer community in terms of attracting and retaining and enhancing the experience, which we're going to hear about more tonight. It's a debate for another night, but I think as we look to attract 120,000 people, a lot of immigrants to Canada, to Atlantic Canada, to St. John in particular, I think a conversation with the province in the future around their ability to vote, to hold office, and sit right here with us is where that conversation should go. But we'll celebrate the first step first. But nothing like having newcomers feel part of a community, like when they can vote and when they can sit right here with us as council members in the future. So that's my dream. I want to share tonight on the 6-story wood construction. Congratulations again. I came from that business. I'm really excited. BC has it's Atlantic Woodworks, is that?
Yes, that's who we worked with a couple of years ago.
Yeah, so they're part of the Wood Council, and so BC has been doing a lot of this work for many years. So thanks for innovating there as well, and I think we should do everything we can to get a pilot project up and going. And then lastly, I love being around great thought leaders like yourselves. The issue that Councillor Armstrong was just speaking to, I've had a couple of conversations with developers who are working on projects, and you've come back here tonight with a solution that is addressing their concern directly. So you're to be really congratulated and making it simpler for developers to get to a yes and get to a successful project. And as we all know, there's lots of T's to cross and I's to dot. So, wow, that was awesome. I really love that tonight. Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you. On the question then, all those in favor? Anyone contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Okay, thank you. Next item.
Your worship, item 12.2 on your agenda is demolition of vacant, dilapidated, and dangerous building at 22 Belgrave Street.
Okay, Ms. Hamilton, are you first? Okay, thank you. Ms. Hamilton.
Yes, Your Worship. Before you this evening is demolition of a dangerous buildings file at 22 Belgrave Street in the city's east side. Staff to continue to achieve positive momentum related to the Accelerated Dangerous Buildings program, which is a key priority of the city's growth committee to beautify neighborhoods and create a positive climate for reinvestment. I'd like to introduce Ms. Catherine Lowe, who will provide a brief overview of the file and recommendation. This is Ms. Lowe's first appearance before council as technical services engineer, and she will be leading these files going forward.
So good evening, council, and your worship. So tonight I'll be presenting the staff recommendation to demolish the dangerous and vacant building at 22 Belgrave Street. So there are two buildings on the property. There's a two-story single-family house and a garage as well. The property is considered abandoned. So the owner, Kevin McVicker, who resided in St. John, is deceased, and the estate has confirmed that they have no interest in the property. In July 2018, the house did suffer a fire, and damage caused by the fire has not and will not be remedied, which will cause the building's condition to continue to deteriorate. So I have some photos to show you of the building. They start on page 246 to 255 in the packet. Yeah, so if there are any questions?
Okay, don't see any. Oh, just, do I have to, yeah, that's fine. Okay, thank you. I just have to, when I just read our, do I have to read the statement before it's on the floor? Okay, thank you, just maybe. Okay, so thank you. 12.2 demolition, 22 Belgrave Street. The information which has been provided in the council kit includes the report of the building inspector stating that the building located at 22 Belgrave Street, PID 552222624, is a hazard to the safety of the public by virtue of its being, amongst other things, dilapidated or structurally unsound. Is there present an owner, including anyone holding any encumbrance upon this property, who wishes to present evidence to the contrary, i.e. that the building is structurally sound and not dilapidated? Not seeing any. Maybe we could just do that again. Could you move that again, Deputy?
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Moved by the Deputy, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Thank you. And Councillor Reardon, you have a question?
Yes, so the building is actually owned by Mr. McVicker's estate, is it? And does that create any difference for us? Any complications for us?
Through your worship to the councillor. So the estate never took ownership of the building, so it is still owned by the owner.
So a person who's deceased can own a building?
Yeah, technically.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't present any problem. I mean, they've assured us that they have no interest in the building and no one else has come forward, so we assume that it will just remain there.
Can I ask legal if that's, sounds, I guess, normal?
Well,
in the process?
Sorry, just 1 second. Need to get somebody's mic off. City Solicitor, there you go.
if the deceased had survivors, then the property will devolve to the survivors. But for the purposes of this proceeding, it doesn't diminish the municipality's authority to take the actions recommended.
Okay, thank you, City Solicitor. Okay, Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Your Worship. This one is a little bit different, and you know, I understand the estate doesn't want the house. The taxpayers don't want to pay to tear it down either. Is there any way that we can recuperate our costs from the estate to tear that house down? Because once it's down, the piece of property is not going to be worth what it's going to cost to tear it down. It's just another one of these situations where we're paying a bill that perhaps the estate could pay or something.
Could we, just Councillor, just, I guess is this any different in terms of us recuperating our costs than any other property that we tear down?
No.
Okay.
Well, it's, the province is going to pay it, but the taxpayers in New Brunswick are going to be the
Right.
ones that are, this is what I'm getting at,
Yeah.
right? It's not St. John taxpayers, it's all of the taxpayers in the province.
Right.
But I guess the difference here is the owner is gone, and now you have a group of people that might think differently or say, you know, that's a fair thing to do. I don't know. Anyway, I agree with tearing it down, absolutely, 100%. I just thought maybe we could recoup our costs from the estate if there was any there to recoup.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, through your worship to the counselor, that's valid, but I mean, that's exactly the reason why the estate did not take over the property. They don't have the funds to do anything with it. So,
Okay, just, I guess just to pick up on that point, so I mean, I guess if we play the counselor's point out for a second, so a building is dilapidated, the building ultimately comes down, we're repaid for our cost to demolish that building then has, call it a lien against it, where that property is available for sale eventually to someone else, where the lien holder would look to recover their costs that way. Is that essentially what happens?
correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Not that there isn't risk in that, Counselor, but that's the mechanism that exists, yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead, yeah, Counselor McKenzie?
No, and I don't want to prolong it. I guess it's the same thought process that I had with people that own more than one building. Well, go ahead, tear it down, I don't care, but don't put a lien on this one. Well, if you're the same owner of different buildings, then we should be leaning one that's worth something. That's all.
Yep, okay, thank you. Okay, no other questions, thank you. On the question, all those in favor? Anyone contrary-minded? Not seeing any, thank you. Thank you, great job, first time at the podium with us tonight. And I just wanted to highlight again the successes of this project and our appreciation, I hope so. By my count, that's over 230 properties that have been addressed in the last 3 years. Clearly, this council has said this is a priority. That's easy for us to say. Wouldn't happen without our staff out making this happen. This was a light package tonight. I think it was only 40 or 50 pages. Sometimes there are 150 or 200 pages of backing and forth. But I also want to just highlight, for example, in last year, there were 83 projects closed, and 50 of those projects were repaired and reoccupied. I think that's the bigger narrative here, is that, you know, because of the action, again, by council and by our staff teams making it happen, buildings are being repaired, they're being reoccupied, their taxes are going up, their first responders are not having to go into those 50 units, you know, and worry about floorboards and so on and so forth. So this is one of the great success projects that we've had, programs, and we're going to discuss it here in a few minutes again. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, next item, Common Clerk. Oh, your mic is off, of course. Yep, there you go.
Your Worship, 12.3 on your agenda is a staff report from Commissioner Hamilton, evaluation of urban development incentive and urban beautification grant policies.
Okay, thank you. Hamilton, you going to hit your button for me? Thank you. Ms. Hamilton.
Yes, Your Worship, members of council, the item before you this evening is a recommendation from the city's growth committee, reviewed at their meeting last week, to move forward with amendments to the city's urban development incentives program that are based on best practices and are intended to really improve the administration and the growth outcomes of these programs. The review in your package highlights the success of this suite of programs, which are really aimed at stimulating private investment and catalyzing development on the Central Peninsula. The program has spurred investment in vacant lots, vacant buildings, and upper floors, and has generated new tax-based growth. Over the course of the 3-year pilot program, it has generated 11 urban development projects, which leveraged $7.3 million in private sector investment, $56,000 in annual tax revenue for the completed projects, and 41 beautification projects valued at $551,000. The program has yielded a positive return on investment for the city's contribution, with those funds paid back within 2 to 4 years for the grants provided. Importantly, it has generated new revenues, recurring tax revenues, as well as building permits and water and sewer revenues. Has delivered 71 new residential units, beautified neighborhoods, and reduced the cost burden on the city from and turning a number of challenged properties to more productive use. The continuation of this program is vital to maintain the momentum on the Central Peninsula and to extend the reinvestment that we're seeing in the uptown to other challenged neighborhoods. Staff are recommending improvements to the program to make it more customer-centric and to spur tax-based growth. These recommendations were endorsed by Growth Committee, and a copy of the presentation delivered to Growth Committee is in Council's package and showcases some of the transformations that have occurred with these properties. And I would add that Mr. Andrew Reed was the lead on the review of these programs and is available tonight to respond to Council questions.
Okay, thank you. Moved by the Deputy, second by Councillor McKenzie. Thank you. And Councillor Reardon.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to thank staff. I think it's a fantastic project, and we always look to see what our return on our investment is, and this is one where you've got numbers that can support that investment that you make. And for a lot of these investments in the uptown especially, it's a difference a lot of times between an elevator in your building and not, because an elevator's $100,000, and if you have to build the shaft, et cetera, it gets very expensive. So you really can get that population density that you're looking for with an elevator. It makes all the difference in the world. So it's a big boost to buildings that have more than one story. Now, mind you, if you go in a building that doesn't have an elevator, you're a lot healthier. Dragging your groceries
You're
up.
conflicted on that elevator example, aren't you?
Dragging your groceries up 4 flights of stairs. But anyways, no, seriously, I think it's a great benefit. We have so many old buildings. A lot of them are vacant on the upper floors. This is a great opportunity to expand our population growth in structures that are already available. So thanks so much. Thanks, Andy, for all your hard work. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Armstrong.
I just want to reiterate what Councillor Reardon just said. It's great. The numbers speak for themselves, so it's a plus and a win-win for the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Merrithew.
Thank you, Worship. Just again, I'll reiterate what the councillors have said. The ROI of 2 to 4 years payback is stellar, actually. It's fantastic. So, I look to the Growth Committee and thank them. They've done a great job implementing this with staff, of course, and I'd like to see it beyond the Central Peninsula. Do we have any plans to look beyond the Central Peninsula?
Someday.
Ms. Hamilton?
Are you answering that, Deputy?
Yes, Your Worship, through you to the councillor. Certainly, that is something we aspire to do. It has been a topic at the Growth Committee a number of times. We feel for 2019, it's important to keep the momentum going. So we're continuing to see results in the core of the Central Peninsula, but we need that to extend out to other neighborhoods as well. And we think it's important with the Central Peninsula Neighborhood Plan coming forward for adoption later this year to continue the focus on the Central Peninsula for this year, but certainly 2020 going forward, there'll be opportunities to extend it out to other areas.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay. Okay, great. The recommendation's on the floor. I'll call for the question. I think that was moved? It was moved. Thank you. On the question then, all those in favor? Anyone contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you. Thanks again, Ms. Hamilton, for that excellent work. No problem. Common Clerk, next item.
Yes, Your Worship. Item 13.1 on your agenda is the 2019 Growth Work Plan from the Growth Committee.
Okay, thank you. I wondered, or I would like Council, if I could just make some opening remarks with regards to all of the 13 items. I'm wearing my Growth Committee Chair hat for a moment on behalf of the members, and then I'll turn it over to Ms. Hamilton, who can tee up any of the presenters. We had a fantastic, all of our growth committee meetings are great meetings. We had a really fantastic growth committee meeting on the 16th of April, where we in detail reviewed our 2018 results, and we talked about our 2019 work plan and many of the items that we're going to be discussing today. And one of the, not shifts, but I think one of the main elements to really celebrate here, and I really, not only our staff, but our city manager, who's a few months in here, but making a deep and profound impact on the organization. And he's really around what I call the two bookends. We have the awesome finance committee and the growth committee, growth and finance, the two elements that we talk about and work on every day. And we talked about during the opening remarks in our growth committee meeting, who enables growth? And the short answer is, as the city manager would say, and the growth and development team, is everyone. And Common Council, Growth, Finance Committee, city departments and agencies, provincial and federal counterparts, private and community sector partners. So a really positive and momentum-building sort of a fundamental agreement that we're all in the boat and we all have our hands on the oars, if you will. So it really and truly is all about growth. The CI presentations tonight were a great segue to the work that the Growth Committee has been doing. I think, to push and prod and look for new opportunities to accelerate and build on past successes. The other piece that was introduced at the Growth Committee meeting this past week, and we're going to be doing again, is we invited in, and we're going to be celebrating and sharing growth success stories. We invited in Jan and Yenny Delval. You may not know. I hope you did see the article in the Telegraph Journal. It was really great to hear their I say newcomers. They've been in St. John now for about a dozen years. Immigrated from Cuba. And when you hear from one of your citizens who's talking about St. John as paradise, and how thankful they were for living in this community, and some very direct feedback on what it's like to be an entrepreneur, to own 3 businesses, the bistro at the airport, a commercial cleaning company, and also help me, Councilor and Councilor Armstrong, 14 and a half Cafe. Yeah, 14 and a half Cafe on the west side at Reversing Falls. And talking about and sharing with committee and with the media and with the public, how folks like Kathy Coyle, who gave them a chance and hired them as their first customer for their commercial cleaning business, and how that became the catalyst for them moving on. And so we're going to do more of that. That was fantastic as well. So each of the items that you're going to hear about, this council endorsed, again, growth as a major pillar back in 2016 in council's priorities. This council endorsed the roadmap for smart growth. Most of those elements in that roadmap are now complete, and they're continuing to evolve. And what you're going to hear about tonight is what is our 2019 work plan. You're going to hear likely about what we're not going to do in 2019, because there's only 8 months left to the year. And you're going to hear about some of the successes that we've had around people, jobs, and growing the tax base. So I think that some of the items that are before you tonight that were debated and discussed at great length with Growth Committee are about investing in and accelerating growth outcomes in the city, which as your Growth Committee Chair and Mayor, I would say is exactly what we need to be doing. So I'll stop there and turn it over to you, Ms. Hamilton, and you can tee it up. Thank you.
Yes, Your Worship. So details of the 2019 work plan for growth were presented at Growth Committee at its April meeting and endorsed by the committee. I wasn't intending on representing here this evening, but just did want to give a few highlights for council's information. The work plan really enables the city to track all projects that fall under the umbrella of growth. And included in the presentation is a summary of the year-end 2018 growth work plan, as well as looking forward to projects identified for 2019. The committee also will be receiving and continues to receive year-end presentations from its economic development agencies. So Develop St. John, Discover St. John, and Edge St. John all are attending to present their 2018 results. Noteworthy for the 2019 work plan is that many of the growth-focused projects are not only from growth and community development services, but really spread across efforts of the departments, all departments within the City of St. John. I think you saw evidence of that this evening in the continuous improvement presentations. Really, the leadership, the city manager's leadership on It's All About Growth has placed growth front and center for all service areas. So the committee at the meeting last week endorsed the work plan. And so it's before you this evening for a receive and file, and myself or Phil Ouellette would be happy to answer questions of council if you have them.
I'll move the 2019 growth.
Be received and filed. Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Mackenzie. Thank you. Any questions, council? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you, Ms. Councillor Reardon.
I don't have any questions, but I was very, I mean, it's great to see it concise and on paper and, you know, all there and who's doing what, et cetera. So it's been very, I guess, informative for me and very happy to see it. So appreciate all the work. Thanks, Phil. Jacqueline, that you guys have done on it, your whole team. So it's great. Perfect.
Okay, thank you for the comment. Thanks. Councillor Norton.
Yeah, Councillor Reardon says it really well. You know, I'm not a member of that committee, and sometimes, I don't know, maybe growth committee members have the same thoughts about what finance does.
Envy. It's cross-committee envy, Councillor, yes.
So there's cross-committee envy. So I might just add more to our workload in terms of producing something similar for growth committee. But thanks to staff and obviously the growth committee for your leadership and putting it down on paper. It captures really well what you've, the whole time I'm like, what are they doing in there? But it looks like you've been really up to some good work. So thanks a lot for everything you're doing, and obviously you're meeting targets, and I think it just spells out some of the good stuff that you're doing. So thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Councillor. Okay, thanks very much. I don't see any other questions on the motion. All those in favor? Anyone contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you. Motion is carried. Next item, Common Clerk. Keep turning your mic off. There you go.
13.2, Your Worship, St. John Local Immigration Partnership from the Growth Committee.
Okay, thank you. And once again, I'll turn that over to Ms. Hamilton. Ms. Hamilton.
Yes, Your Worship. So the Growth Committee endorsed a recommendation for the city to make application to the federal government to be the agreement holder for St. John's Local Immigration Partnership from the period of 2020 to 2025. A local immigration partnership is a federally funded local initiative that really aims to improve settlement and integration outcomes for newcomers in the community and to strengthen the community's ability to meet the needs of its newcomers. In St. John, Human Development Council received funding, or currently has funding, for a period of 3 years from Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada to be the agreement holder for St. John's Local Immigration Partnership. At the time of their application, really the city was not active on the immigration and population growth file. However, through the Roadmap for Smart Growth and the Population Growth Framework, the city has demonstrated significant commitment and leadership in supporting population growth and the vision to be the most welcoming city in Canada. Housing the St. John Local Immigration Partnership within the City of St. John will enhance the city's ability to play a coordinating and leadership role with key local partners involved in supporting and welcoming newcomers. A letter of support from the Human Development Council is attached to the council report. With the approval of council, the city will apply for the City of St. John to be the agreement holder of the St. John Local Immigration Partnership from the period April 1st, 2020 to March 31st, 2025, which could bring with it $100,000 annually to support the coordination and support towards the Local Immigration Partnership.
Okay, moved by the deputy, seconded by Councillor Mackenzie. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, Thank you. I'd just say, just a comment, I guess, is that just, Ms. Hamilton, you may have said it, and I apologize if I missed it, that this was the plan from day one, and I'd just like to thank the Human Development Council for their work. And I really describe the LIP in the simplest way in my mind, is it's been the glue that has brought all of the settlement agencies, ourselves, a lot of the players into the room to discuss our strategies and our go-forward plan when it comes to population growth. And as you heard a bit about when I was away, and we talked more about in growth last week, early indicators would say that through the efforts of a tremendous group of leaders and ambassadors in St. John, we've turned half of that population loss from 12 to 16 around. Those are the early indicators that we have. So very positive indicators of some good work happening here, and we know population growth is one of the keys. So thank you, and it's on the floor then. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you very much. Next item, come clerk.
13.3, Your Worship, another Growth Committee report. It's entitled Growth Reserve Fund Request Dangerous and Vacant Building Program.
Okay, moved by Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Thank you. Okay, I don't see any questions. Ms. Hamilton, would you like to just give us? Sorry, Ms. Hamilton, you want to give us a quick overview?
Yes, Your Worship. So this is a recommendation from Growth Committee to continue efforts to accelerate the city's dangerous and vacant buildings program with support from the Growth Reserve in the amount of $25,000. And this accelerated program was identified in the city's roadmap for smart growth and is playing a key role in delivering tax-based growth within the city of St. John, and by tackling and eliminating dangerous buildings that negatively impact property value and quality of life for citizens. In 2018, and this is highlighted in the materials in the package, the program was accelerated with additional resources allocated to enhance the mandate and allow a focused approach in the North End. In 2018, 83 cases were resolved, surpassing targets with 50 buildings repaired or reoccupied. So the report in your package does provide detailed program update and also provides targets for 2019, which are intended to maintain the focus in the North End, continue to double down on our efforts to see reinvestment in the city's neighborhood, given the same level of funding as 2018, and the target is to resolve 80 cases in 2019. And I know Ms. Rachel Van Wart, the city's manager of customer service and operations, is available if there are questions of council this evening.
Okay, we do have a few questions. We'll start off. Councillor Reardon.
I don't have a question. I just want to say I think it's a good move, because it seems like, whenever we get the demolition in the package, we're all sort of cheering to see, to see another building. It's a struggle, because if it's a heritage building, it's difficult. But some of the state that they're in, to try to get someone to take them on can be very, very onerous, need a lot of money. So I guess at the end of the day, for us to clean up neighborhoods, to make neighborhoods safer, we are always concerned about vacant and dilapidated buildings catching on fire. We're worried about people entering them and, sometimes squatting in them, et cetera. So they can be for neighbors, they can be a burden for neighbors. And if something happens, I suspect they don't have any insurance to cover anything. If your house burns down with it, you'd have to rely on your own insurance. So, they have to be removed. So it's great to have that extra cash in that budget, and it's great to have staff working on that. And I know there's a lot of them there, and I know it takes a lot of time to prioritize them, but at the end of the day, it's been moving forward at a pretty reasonable rate, and I think everyone's pretty happy with where we've come. So we just wanted to say thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Worship. Pretty happy is an understatement. I can't believe what I'm seeing. It's transforming the whole Southern Peninsula and the North End. I say it's the best investment we can make in our city, because we pay it up front, but we get it back. And not only do we get the money back, we get a nice-looking city out of it. So I'd say whenever we have opportunities to put a little bit more in, as long as we have the staff capability to do it, money's not always the issue. But I say we should keep on doing it because it draws it, it's attracting people to those neighborhoods again. They're coming back and saying, wow, this didn't look this way, 2 years ago. And developers are starting to get interested because you're not getting one small postage stamp piece of property now, you're getting a block that's been, looked after. So, no, I think it's great. I think Rachel and her crew has done a tremendous job, and I fully support this and more. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Norton.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'll piggyback on those comments. It's what's going on here is a rallying point for all wards. It's been, doesn't matter, Ward 1, 2, 3, or 4. It's been a rallying point, a call to see action on this one, and it's going to, this type of investment, Councillor McKenzie's already said it, it's money that pays dividends for the development community, for small pockets of the community, for those investing, for the streetscape, but it's absolutely huge. I mean, the only thing better than seeing some of these buildings come down is a new building permit being issued. So, if we're not getting that, let's go for the latter. And the good thing about tearing these down is we know that something's going to follow, and it's probably a new building permit at some point. So, kudos to you and the team. Happy to support this one. Let's just continue the momentum on that one. This is a big win for St. John. I would say, I don't know if it's on the city manager's radar, but if I know communications right now is tapped with MB Flood 2019. But if there was something that's to be put out on that Twitter feed or that webpage, like this infographic here, not to make it any more dense with any other good news that we have out there, but to see what's been done here is good. This really supports some of the investment of the tax dollars that are being paid. But if communications can send this out in some way in terms of a blitz to get the awareness out there, it's great. I've heard about this one just in passing and talking to people, so it's out there. So let's spread the good news about what's being done to pull out some of those rotten teeth. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Councillor. City Manager.
Members of council, just as a heads up, a point that was discussed at Growth Committee that I think is important to highlight here. This is the second year running where we have had to come to council and ask to tap into the growth reserve in order to top up funds because of the incredible success of this program. Just for your awareness and as a heads up, when we start talking about the budget for next year, we will probably attempt to bake this into the budget from the get-go to recognize this as something that is systemic now and needs to stay within our approach moving forward.
Okay, thank you, City Manager. Just to pick up in reverse order here, Councillor Norton, your suggestion, Growth Committee with staff support are working on a series of infographics, updates to communicate exactly what you said. So thanks, you're completely aligned there. And then just, again, everyone's sort of saying it here, but this is game changing. It's the image of the city. It's in some cases clustering and making available new development land. It's a significant 60+% reinvestment and reinvigoration of properties, and it's life changing. And I think of the Manawaganish Road Hotel property. I think of some of the they're really everyone can name their project that each one of us gets phone calls about once a week to say, when are you addressing this? And the great news is we're saying it's on the list. It's working its way up the list, and by demonstrating almost every council meeting that we're dealing with another building, I think we're demonstrating tremendous amount of action. So kudos to everyone. So thanks. Okay, on the recommendation that's on the floor, all those in favor? Aye. Anyone contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thanks again. Next item, Councillor.
13.4 on the agenda, Heritage Grant Program Budget and Policy Amendments from the Growth Committee.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hamilton.
Yes, Your Worship and members of council, the report before you this evening recommends improvements to the Heritage Grants Program as recommended by Growth Committee and the City's Heritage Board. These improvements will allow for more flexibility in heritage projects, will enable more modern materials for windows to be eligible for reimbursement under the Heritage Grants Program, And these changes we anticipate will significantly increase demand for the program, and aligned with the city's growth efforts will reduce barriers for developers and property owners in the city's heritage districts. In order to stimulate additional investment while maintaining the first-come, first-served system of allocating the grants, a funding increase is recommended from the city's growth reserve. This approach of allocating grants is customer-focused and provides development clients added flexibility to pursue investment projects. The city's growth reserve provides strategic funding to reinforce the success of this program and to drive initiatives that support growth outcomes. The Growth Committee reviewed and endorsed the recommendations before Council that the Heritage Grant Program be amended and that the budget be increased for the remainder of 2019 based on an allocation of $80,000 from the city's growth reserve. And a copy of the presentation provided to Growth Committee is in Council's package. And Ms. Emma Sampson, the city's Heritage Officer, is available this evening should there be questions of Council.
Okay, thank you. Somebody like to move the recommendation? Okay, moved by the deputy, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Reardon.
Thank you, Worship. Now, I'm, of course, thrilled to see this because the heritage area, it's your brand, although I don't know if St. John recognizes it, and it's so important for tourism, et cetera. In the summer, every weekend practically, there's a bride on my front doorstep. I mean, that urban infrastructure is what... Exactly, is what people are looking for right now. You've just had 2 churches bought in the uptown to be, used as venues for weddings, et cetera. So it is important. And when I read through my kit, and it says that so far, $35,000 has been allocated so far, which is 43% of the budget, to support $430,000 of work, of value of work. I mean, that's like 12 times. I don't know, Dave, can you get me that if I invest with you? You can? Okay, I'll be right over. Anyways, it's a good investment. It's got a good return on our investment, and I'm happy to hear about the flexibility, because when I sat on Heritage, the rule is that you have to use original material, and it makes it difficult because my wooden windows in my house, which was built in 1885, would have been a much denser wood, a harder wood, and I had them refurbished probably about 7 or 8 years ago, but I still have my original wooden windows. But someone put a Rusco storm window over my windows. So these new windows that will have the aluminum clad will basically be doing the same thing, save your windows. So it's hard to recommend a product, which is today's wood, when we know it's only going to last 10 years. People have replaced their windows and now have rotting windows 10 years later. The wood isn't the same. So we have to move on with heritage. The roof, you won't cover a roof anymore because nobody puts tar and gravel on. I put a membrane on. Nobody wants that. They want to keep moving. So I'm happy to see that better materials are being incorporated in to save those buildings as well. So it's all good. And like I said, I was thrilled to see this. It's got a great return on the investment. So thanks to that team again.
So I'm not sure, is that a yes or no?
I'm all for it.
You're supportive? Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Well, I just wanted to mention this will bring the budget up to what it was last year. Is that correct? I believe that by adding the 80,000 last year, that would be amounting to the total that we had used last year. Is that correct?
Yep, just looking to Ms. Hamilton's going to take a crack at that.
Your Worship, my understanding was that there was 20,000 approved out of the growth reserve last year to boost the program. So this would be increasing that, and really the rationale being that it involves a significant change to the eligibility in the heritage grants, because it's going to open up a significant increased demand. So it would involve a larger increase of a total of $80,000.
So it'd be a total of 160,000 for this year.
That's right.
Yeah. I just, the only thing I wanted to say was like probably if this is successful again this year, which it probably will be, that the same goes when we do our budget at the end of the year, that hopefully we can put all that money in together when we do our budget. So then we're not adding money partway through.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Worship. Again, the numbers don't lie. This is worth every penny that we put into it. I'm a big incentive guy, and it's all good news tonight if you read the numbers. And also, because I'm privileged to sit on the Heritage Board, The Heritage Board itself has completely, and you've heard me say this, has changed 100% the image of the board. We're there helping people, helping developers. I can only think we've turned down one project on the time I've been there, and only because of the rules, but the rules are changing. And the staff's coming, and it's coming before us. But this is all good news for developers uptown. I know it's only uptown, but guess what? You can build in a heritage area, no problem. It's not as stifling as you think, not like it used to be. We're open for business, we're open for ideas, and we're changing the regulations to improve it for developers and homeowners. So I just want to say congratulations to staff, and the numbers never lied. This program and all the others tonight are working. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Just a couple of quick comments, too. One is just to echo all of the comments tonight. I think it speaks well to and links together with why we've recommended for now holding the development incentives in the Uptown Central Peninsula. It speaks to the demand that's happening. It speaks to the celebration, as Councillor Reardon said, of our heritage properties and that legacy. So augmenting to meeting this increased demand, I think, is a win-win across the board. The other thing in your 2019 work plan that we've just now endorsed along with the Growth Committee is a revamped heritage bylaw in the fourth quarter of 2019. So there's a lot of really great work that's going on, and it's all interlinked to achieve augmented and increased growth numbers. So thanks for that. Okay, the question is on the floor. All those in favor? Anyone contrary-minded? Okay, one, thank you. Motion is carried.
Who is the name?
Councillor Casey.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Next item.
Next item, Your Worship, 15.1 on your agenda. It's a ticket purchase request for Hospice 2019 Sunflower Luncheon.
I'll move that it will be referred to the common clerk's office.
Second.
Okay, thank you. And I'm not seeing any mics. Okay, thank you. On the question, all those, sorry?
Just in terms of the wording, I assume that approved based on,
It's referred to the common clerk's office to call the members of council, see if they would.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, so essentially the same recommendation.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, on the question, all those in favor? Anyone contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you. Next item.
15.2, Your Worship, another ticket purchase request for Pro Kids Annual Fundraiser Dinner.
Same motion referred to the common clerk's office to solicit the councillors to see if they wish to attend.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by the deputy, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Thank you. And on the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you. Next item.
15.3, Your Worship, is a ticket purchase request for Taste of the Maritimes.
Again, the same motion we referred to the common clerk's office to have the councillors called and solicited to see if they wish to attend.
Second.
Emailed. Can we say emailed? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Email.
Okay, moved by the deputy, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Thank you. On the question, all those in favor? Anyone contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you. Motion's carried. Next item.
The final agenda item, Your Worship, is from Committee of the Whole. It was a recommendation from Committee of the Whole with respect.
No, sorry, I have, we already did the others.
Yeah, we did 16.1 and 16.2.
Sorry.
It's for the Intergovernmental Affairs and Strategic Communications position.
Do you have a recommendation? No, that's it. Okay, thank you.
Oh, I can read.
No. Okay, thank you. Moved by the deputy, second, I think that was Councillor Reardon. Okay, thank you. Okay, great. On the question, all those in favor? Anyone contrary-minded? Not seeing any. Thank you. Motion is carried.
And that's it.
Move adjourned. Thank you. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you very much.
Who won? Oh.
9 green, 6 liberals, 11 PCs.
Interesting. Wow.
A lot of the PCs are splits between the green.
Right? They thought the green might
I have time to go.
Well, the green's got